Hello, everybody. My name is Jessica Andrianos. I am a recreation therapist at Hutchings Psychiatric Center, and I'm going to be talking to you today about supporting patients through a pandemic. Just to give you a little background about myself, I graduated in 2013 from SUNY Cortland, and when I finished my degree there, I worked with ARC in Onondaga County, and I worked with Elmcrest for about 3.5 years, working with individuals with both developmental and mental health diagnosis. Once I left those positions, I then started my career with New York State with Hutchings Psychiatric Center, working with kids and youth with the crisis respite program. I worked at that job for about 3.5 years until I transitioned over to working on adult inpatient psych. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to review with you today and go over is a lot to do with the programming that we facilitated on an inpatient unit for adults. Feel free to post any ideas or comments on this YouTube thread though, for any other professionals in the field who could use some additional resources to complete programming with patients that they serve on their unit or their facility that they work on. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about supporting patients through a pandemic. So during this presentation, we're going to be talking about the benefits of peer support. We're going to be identifying 4 different programs that RTs can facilitate to assist patients through the pandemic stress. We're going to be able to identify some benefits of leisure education, review leisure education a little bit more, and talk about how to build skills using leisure education for patients. And lastly, we're going to identify 2 virtual supports that patients could continue to use even after discharge. So that's all we're going to be talking about for today. So first off, I wanted to give some facts about COVID. I think it's obvious that we all know that COVID has had a huge impact on the world and the patients that we work with, but it's also nice to have some actual information to show the emotional impact that it's left on the community as well. So in a survey the CDC completed, they found that 40.9% of the 5412 patients that they completed the study on admitted to experiencing mental health or behavioral health problems because of the pandemic. So almost 41% of the people that they studied had experienced some mental health problems because of the pandemic stress. So, I mean, even think about it for yourself. How many repeat patients have you seen during the pandemic? In my facility, we've had quite a few patients identified that didn't know what to do during their day because a lot of the day programming has either closed or been temporarily closed because of the pandemic. They may not be seeing their therapist in person, and some of the supports that they normally have were just not open, so they felt very isolated and they struggled a lot during the pandemic. I've been in quite a few trainings since the start of the pandemic also, and I'm also seeing a lot of the same type of recurring issues that other facilities are having, like in Greater Binghamton Health Psych, and also in Rochester has reported a lot of patients coming back into the hospital during the pandemic because of the lack of the support that they used to have before the pandemic occurred. So what the stress can cause, disruptions in sleep patterns, changes in eating patterns, difficulty concentrating, worsening of chronic health problems, worsening of mental health conditions, increased substance use, persistent fear of one's health or the health of others. I think the last one for me resonates the most with me because I feel like when the pandemic started, with everything that was out there in the news, I was almost even worried to go anywhere outside of my home. I pretty much went to the store and went to work and never went to see any of my family because I was in such fear that I would either have gotten it from work and give it to them, or I would maybe get it from somebody that I know and give it to a patient I work with. So I think the fear was one of the biggest impacts to me on my mental health since this pandemic started. What enhances the stress? So one thing that has definitely overly enhanced the stress for a lot of people that I serve, or I should say work with, are overwatching the news or reading the news or social media way too much. So when I think of this point, I think about like how many times have you felt a little under the weather or you've coughed a little bit and immediately looked up the symptoms of COVID to see if you were maybe experiencing COVID symptoms. So each of you think about that to yourself, right? I know I did on numerous occasions where I was like, what if I have COVID? What if something's wrong with me? And got kind of scared and had some fear around that. And all that did was just add more stress to me, thinking that I was sick when I was okay. And how many of you were worried about being able to find toilet paper, canned food, meat even to feed your family? Think about all of those stresses that were occurring because of social media portraying how we needed to hurry up and get these items. And then they were in short supply to the community. I know a lot of that gave me a lot of stress. So I can't imagine the stress that people that we serve or work with had, also having to deal with and work through their mental health symptoms as well with dealing with all that added stress. The next point that enhances the stress is isolation. So many patients that I have worked with identified they felt very isolated, which caused them to become even more depressed. Face-to-face interactions are shown to reduce symptoms of depression, but with COVID restrictions, people couldn't go anywhere or see people. So it was very hard for them to get that interaction that they needed. The third point is economic stress. If some of the people that we work with had jobs, whether that be full-time or part-time, where their job was abruptly closed or their hours were cut, or even their spouse or their children or somebody they work with was hours were cut or laid off, it was a huge added stress for them. The fourth point is mental health treatment barriers. A lot of places right now are at or near capacity for taking new patients in outpatient facilities. So where do people turn to establish new providers? I mean, think about a couple months ago when there was a scare about availability in hospitals. Imagine needing help with your mental health and not being able to pick the hospital you want to get treatment at because the hospital you would normally go to is on full divergent, which means they were at full capacity, so they were not taking any new patients there. And two, not having a hospital that is even able to help you. I can't imagine having that stress. So I would wonder if some people that needed the treatment didn't get the treatment because they were so where I work, we had a couple patients that were really into watching the news all of the time, which is great to be really informed with what's going on in the community and everything that's occurring. But we had to put restrictions on the news, at least in our facility, because sometimes certain patients were wanting to watch the news all day, which was leading to other patients having a great deal of stress, making them more anxious in the hospital, and then also making them even more anxious to not even want to leave the hospital because they were so worried to go into the community. So we had to put restrictions on when the news was watched and how often it was watched on each of the floors that I work in. The second part is correcting any misinformation. So for patients, they're watching the news. Some of the news stations that they are watching during the limited times, they may or may not be providing the correct information. So Providing patients with information from reputable sources like the WHO or CDC is really important. Also, having them speak to their doctors and nurses about the vaccine and the medications that are out there for them. That is one thing I always tell patients when they're having any issues with their medications or medically, is to talk to the people that prescribe them and the people that give the medications to them. And it helps them develop that relationship where they can talk to these people that are on their teams about medical things or stuff that's going on in the news that they see. The third thing I have on here is checking in frequently. So this can just be going up to the unit and checking on specific patients, checking on all the patients on your caseload, talking to them daily. How are you doing today? How was your weekend? Checking in during group sessions, asking people how they are doing. If they need to bring anything up during a group session, if they need any extra support during a session. The fourth one I have on here is monitoring patient symptoms, which this all includes observation, I should say, and asking questions. So if you maybe notice that a patient that you're working with is appearing to be overly anxious or having a hard time during the pandemic, monitoring that, documenting it, checking in with them more, trying to ask them questions and see what's going on with them and see how you can best support them, because they will probably know the most of how that you could support them through this. And then the last one I have here is encouraging patients to stay connected. So on the inpatient unit that I work on in Hutchings, we've had visitation back and forth throughout the pandemic. Over the last, I would say, like 6 months or so, there have been no visits at all on the inpatient units because of COVID restrictions. So we all try our best to encourage patients to reach out to their family, whether that be using Zoom, FaceTime, Google Duo, writing them cards or writing them notes, which we try to pass out numerous times a day or during groups for patients to be able to fill them out on their own time to send to their families. We also encourage them to call them on the phone whenever they're able to as well, because it's important for them to stay connected with all of those supports that they have in the community, because once they get back out there, we want them to still have the relationships they had to be successful. Now that we've talked a lot about what's going on with COVID, some ways that COVID has been stressful for patients, we're going to dive a little bit more into some skill building, some programming, and some groups that have been helpful to patients at Hutchings specifically. So the first topic we're going to go over is leisure ed, which I know a lot of you are probably pretty familiar with. Leisure education refers to organized instruction about leisure and leisure opportunities. It involves helping all persons develop appreciations, interests, skills, and opportunities that enable them to use their leisure in personally rewarding ways. Let's have another slide about leisure. Leisure is the freedom provided by the cessation of activities, especially free time from work or duties. Here's just another slide about leisure. So I like to bring up leisure ed because I think it's a really important topic to talk about with patients, because we can help them build the skills and build on learning some new fun things that they like to do while they're in the hospital, while they have all this time, right? So once we are able to help them either find new things they like to do, develop more skills and learn and some of those things that they've identified, we can help them move forward with what's the next step, whether that be finding a cooking club that they could do online, or finding a mindfulness workshop they could do online. So we have to kind of think outside the box now with leisure, because of the constraints that we have with COVID, and supporting patients the best way we can to help them still be able to complete leisure, whether that be on their own or with other people or virtually. So leisure education on the unit. So this is just some of the things that I go over with patients when I do leisure education type programming. So providing information to patients about what is healthy versus unhealthy leisure. So I sometimes will do some groups about substance use and self-harm and other self-harming behaviors, and making sure patients realize that those types of behaviors are not considered leisure because they bring harm to themselves. This is where we might be discussing new potential leisure interests. We could be completing new interests with people, identifying interests that they can complete upon discharge or develop into hobbies. For instance, bracelet making, jewelry making, card making, and this could also include individual work to explore new interests. So we've already talked about this a lot. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but a little bit about how some patients have felt isolated during the pandemic. So how can we or you use their leisure to feel less isolated? Can they make items that have become a hobby for them to sell or to donate? Can they join virtual groups online that talk about something that they're interested in, whether it be jewelry making, gaming, card making, scrapbooking? We have to provide people with the skills to be able to start and develop the basic knowledge before they leave our care, right? I attended a training recently that talked about developing programs that teach skills that can be translated to after discharge. So one thing I've been really working hard on with patients individually is providing a homework assignment where this patient that I'm working individually with has a simple assignment each week where she can then develop it into her routine. For instance, she picked out an affirmation that she really liked, where she established she would like to say it every day before she goes to bed. And then I check in with her each week when we have our individual sessions, and I say, how did your assignment go? And we kind of add one little thing each week so it could be built into her daily routine. So she identified that she actually did this affirmation more than just before going to bed. She did it multiple times a day, and she felt like she wanted to do this more because it helped her feel better about herself. Another example of an assignment that she had was that she listed all of her values that she identified she values the most, and she was asked to ask herself, what am I doing today to demonstrate that these are all important to me? Some other examples of some things that I worked on with this individual patient are, in our last session this week, we downloaded a few applications on the iPads that we work on for mindfulness and self-affirmation, and we started becoming acquainted with one application specifically, and I plan to work with her each week to get used to using these applications so that she knows how to use them, she could use them regularly, how to download them, and just basically how to use them, so that when she leaves the hospital, she has these tools readily available that she could also download or use that are free. She knows how to use. She has made them a routine by using them in treatment, and then hopefully she is more successful because she has more tools in her back pocket to use. So here are some other examples that I listed for assisting patients with leisure interests. So maybe you are helping someone learn how to scrapbook. You're showing them where to find different layouts, or providing them with information on where to buy supplies, or providing them information with purchasing supplies and scrapbooking supplies. Maybe you are giving them a lot of different magazines. Maybe you're giving them some of the nifty looking paper and some of the some glue or some tape for them to make their own little scrapbook pages with some magazines that they like. With photography, maybe you could be exploring this with whatever that you do have, like a phone, an iPad, a camera, journaling, or book story writing. We had a patient recently on the unit that was really interested in writing books, so she started writing a children's book. She also wrote some stories about her life or a topic that was interesting to her. Okay. Some other examples I have here are journaling. So depending on the patient, this could also be used as a coping skill or a way to schedule their day. Maybe they journal every day when they wake up, or they journal every night before they go to bed. Some other examples I have on here are art projects, which could be using recycled materials so it doesn't cost a lot to continue after discharge. I remember I went to a session years ago at a non-rec therapy related conference where this house of people that had developmental disabilities lived, and they all went to like garage sales and yard sales and did all this really cool art project, all these really cool artwork and art projects that they were able to sell because how awesome they were. And they did it all for very cheap costs because of using recycled materials. So kind of just like even thinking outside the box on the projects that you do with people, using what you have, right? Maybe if people are willing to donate some supplies, using whatever you are able to use in your facility, you have in your facility that people are willing to share. Okay, another big resource that we have provided patients with is virtual visits with their families. So we have one patient that talks with her daughter who lives in another country. I believe she lives in like Africa. I could be totally wrong, so I won't be quoted on the exact place. But she lives like across the world, and she Google Duos with her daughter every week at the same time. We have a few other patients that Zoom with their families regularly, and then we have also had some patients that have asked to Zoom with family members during certain holidays or certain events. Like last year, I made sure to help a patient Zoom with her children so that she was able to talk to them on Mother's Day. So making ourselves available as much as we can to provide patients with support to still see their families and talk to their families. So I think I already mentioned this, but visits have been suspended on and off for months for people. So this is very important for the patients that we work with to be able to Zoom with their families as much as possible because they're not able to see them at all. I know I mentioned this woman who Google Duos with her daughter weekly. It's kind of amazing to see how she is during these sessions because she is so clear mentally when talking to her daughter. It is like so amazing to see how much she brightens up, how clear she is with her conversations. It's just amazing. So I think as much as we're able to provide this to patients or the people that we work with, I think it's definitely very important. So another way that we could also support patients while doing sessions like these is we can help them with completing some individual work or some individual games, activities with their patients while they're on their phone or they're on a Zoom call with their families. Maybe you can organize an activity that patients can do, like playing a small game or an activity. You can identify topics with patients beforehand, and then they can talk to their families about it. So I think along with just helping facilitate Zoom or video chatting with family members, I think it's also important to think about some ways that you can also aid patients beforehand, because sometimes it's hard to talk to people, over a video chat. So if you could do any prep work before, that would be awesome too, to help patients. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is group dynamics. So group dynamics are the effects of roles and behaviors have on other group members and the group as a whole, right? So trust among each other, working together on something, holding each other accountable are all big impact or factors, I should say, of group dynamics. Research suggests that positive group dynamics occur more when everyone is really creative on the team, which makes total sense, right? So with this one, maybe we're having a discussion with a group on how their behaviors or their symptoms can affect the group as a whole, right? So what does that look like? Maybe we can say, if so-and-so chooses to break the television, that may mean everyone cannot watch TV now, right? If Carrie's having a bad night and assaults somebody, then this may disrupt the unit and people interacting with her and others, because this may be scary or have other people worried to come out of their rooms and socialize. So we're not necessarily going to be picking actual people on the unit when we have these examples, but having these conversations and making sure patients realize the effects that they have on other people and other people's treatment while they're in the hospital. I think people sometimes fail to realize that everybody is on the team. So even other patients are on the team, other people that aren't on your treatment team are on the team. Everybody is part of the team on the unit. One person can completely affect the entire rest of the team. So just trying your best to make that team-like atmosphere happen, I think it has been like really important for, I think, myself. And I honestly feel like, I don't know if it's because the pandemic and patients have just been able to get a lot closer, but I myself have felt like, for the most part, I feel like the patients have been a lot closer in the last like 6 to 8 months than any other time that I have worked on inpatient. So because a lot of them trust one another, talk to each other, and encourage each other through their treatment. And I think all of those things are extremely important. So some other ways to support group dynamics are having small special events or activities on the unit, whether that be maybe that could be specific days of the week. You have a tie-dye day, you have a sports day, a superhero day, where people can dress up or people can wear certain clothing items. Maybe you have events for holidays, whether even if it's just unit-based. Maybe you have staff that are musicians come in and play some holiday music, or play some holiday movies. And if you're able to, maybe have some holiday food for people. Maybe this means sending cards out for family members, right? Or having a drum circle or a paint and sip night. I think drum circles are amazing, and I feel like I see patients become so much closer when I have done drum circles before, because they get to work in a team and they get to be themselves also and show their own autonomy. So I've always had a lot of success with drum circles. So drum circles are like really important in some of the treatment that I have done on the unit. Another aspect of supporting patients is through peer support and team building. So it kind of ties along with group dynamics. So maybe we're asking people some things that they think are important on the unit to have in programming, and we're doing those types of activities, right? So if a patient's saying, I really would like to do, like, for example, I had this one patient ask if we could do a recovery vision board. So we did like 30 minutes of a discussion group, and at the end of group, that's what we did. And it meant so much to her to be able to do that. Maybe that means we're willing to share some of just a little bit of our personal information about ourselves and the lessons that we've learned. Maybe this means communicating openly to others, but not in a rude way. Communicate changes to patients when you can, so they're not surprised, like with restrictions or differences in the hospital or program planning changes. Maybe you're doing activities for people to get to know one another, especially when there's new people on the unit. So imagine like coming onto a unit where there's 25, 30 people that have all been there for a considerable amount of time, and you're just coming on the unit and brand new. How can you be motivated to take part in any activities on the unit or feel more at home, I guess? Some other ways that you could support this are letting the group make decisions together. It's not one or two people's decisions, but everybody's. And promoting helping one another when having a difficult day or difficult time, right? So I'm a big fan of having group discussions. So I often do a lot of group discussions for a lot of the programming that I do instead of like papers and drawing and stuff like that. I'm more of a group discussion type person. So I have found them to be very helpful because during group discussions, people are able to talk about when they're having a hard time, what's going well, what supports them, what doesn't support them, who can help support them if they're having a hard time. One patient on the unit identified to the group, like, when I'm in my room, I would like some time to calm myself down. And another patient asked, but what if you're doing something that's not okay and you're not doing well? Do you still want to be alone? And she was able to communicate to her peers, well, no, but if I'm going through something, maybe get a staff or encourage me to come down to the day room. But if I'm okay, then just let me stay in my room to work it out. So when patients are struggling, maybe even in group or that day, I will sometimes ask the group what they think about what this person said. Like, if a person said, for instance, I'm never going to get out of here, I'll be stuck here forever. Another patient responded by saying, everyone has their time. Don't judge your recovery on someone else's. I like to think about the small positives in my day, like going to NA or being just another day sober. You should try that. We're all here if you need us. So just even building those group dynamics and the support around each patient by reminding them that everyone is here for them and everyone is going through this recovery path also. I think that's been very helpful. And like I said, I think we have a really good group of people on the unit right now that are all really supportive of one another. So I think that's been very helpful in treatment for them. And it's been very helpful during programming to have people that are so encouraging and motivating to one another. So as we continue about peer support, this could look like encouraging patients to support one another as much as they are able to, like I just stated. This could include simple ways like listening to others, providing some suggestions, checking on others when they're having a hard time, asking a peer to complete a preferred activity. Maybe this could be like in a downtime when no programming is occurring and they can tell that this person's not doing well. Maybe I can ask this person to play Yahtzee with me or to play chess with me so that they might pick up their night a little to feel a bit better. Make a card with encouraging words, provide some validation, and maybe they could even do a program like Stars of the Week. So before COVID, we had this program called Stars of the Week, which was a group where patients had the opportunity to, I guess you could say, nominate somebody that has been their star of their week, somebody that has encouraged them a lot in their recovery and in their treatment. So patients were provided with blank stars that they could fill out and hand out to people. What they would write on them is who helped them that week, who means a lot to them, and what that person did. Then the star was put up in this room so people could always see them. They also were able to give the star back to the person if they wanted to. So this helped some patients show their gratitude to either another patient that helped them out, or it also showed some gratitude to some of the staff that they worked with that helped them since they've been seeking some treatment. So peer support also provides another peer or patient with hope by reminding them of past successes and how they can get there again. This is where someone can be a role model for another person, and maybe this is where you can become a cheerleader for somebody, or a peer on the unit could be a cheerleader for another patient who needs it. So I wanted to give you some examples of some little cool activities that you could do that involve minimal, I guess, materials needed. So I wanted to show you some of these websites real quick. Just gonna exit this for a second. So here is the one about a galaxy. So I wanted to show you guys this one because I thought this one was really cool and it had minimal supplies that you needed. So this is a simple galaxy night sky. Here are the paints that you need. I'm going to go down. So you need a sponge. And this is exactly, here are the steps of how you would complete this. So it goes through all of these steps right here on this page. And this is the URL up here, the website. And it continues down and shows you all the different ways of how to complete this step by step. So I thought all this was really cool to be able to try to do something like this on the unit. And at the end, your sky would look like this. There's also a video included on this if you guys would like to watch this also, because I know for me videos are pretty helpful. So you could also play this video while you facilitate this program and just pause it as you go, or you could play this just so you get the steps down and you're able to communicate exactly what needs to happen and how to do it. So this is a beginner level. This would take you about an hour, and it shows you all of the materials down here and the instructions below. So I'm just gonna briefly go down here real quick, and then you guys can always go back to this later and take a look at it. I thought it was super cool though. Okay, and then another one I wanted to show you was this one, because I thought this one was really cool too. Just like a bouquet of flowers. And here's the URL up here for this one too. I'm gonna go down. So these are some of the colors or the supplies that you would need to do this. Of course, like a lot of you might already have brushes, you might already have something to put paint in. So you might not need some of these materials already. So I'm just gonna go down here so you can kind of just see the little step-by-step of how to do this. So this gives you all the instructions. So you're gonna use a pencil to draw it on first, right? Or stencil it on. So maybe this will involve you pre-stenciling a lot of this on the canvases already, and then patients will be able to paint it after. And I always think it'd be really important for you to have a demonstration piece like they have right here, so that people can see exactly what they are supposed to have their picture look like. So that would be the finished product right there. And then I have another website here I just wanted to show you guys, because this had a lot of different ideas that you could use for acrylic painting for same type of stuff. It has a lot of different ideas that you could use, and you could go to basic painting supplies that would be good and cheap ones that you could get, and just other paint and sip little exercises that you could do. Like this one involves Q-tips and some paint. Just depends on the people you work with, what type of supplies you're able to use, or what would be more difficult for certain people, depending on if they're able to hold certain instruments or materials. But this has a whole bunch of different stuff on this website. So I encourage you to take a look at this one too. Okay, let me get back into this. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to show you where this video is. I'm not going to play it for you because it has some music in the background, so it might take the video down if I play any music. So I wanted to show you on Facebook where I found this. So here it is. I really want you guys to pause the video at this point and take a look at this, because I think it's truly awesome. This program that they completed with the patients that they work with, really thinking outside the box with supplies, being able to space out from each other, and doing an activity where people also are able to get in some functional movements where they're stretching and they're moving themselves about, and they're also able to have some fun. So I'd like everybody to please watch this if they haven't done so already, because I know this video has been out there a little bit on some of the rec pages. And then if you have any other programs or videos that you would suggest to anybody, please put those in the comment section, please. So like I said, take a minute and pause this, and then come back to us when you're done with that. And then I also wanted to show you guys this one. One sec. I'm going to play the audio through my phone, so just bear with me for a minute. My computer will agree. 1 second here. It's impossible to be able to play the video, unfortunately, through a computer while you're also doing the presentation, so I have to pull up the video separately and be able to play the audio. So this video I thought was super cool because it's just another event that a facility did that was thinking outside the box for patients and also made them super happy, and it really made them want to be active in programming because of how different this program was that was completed. So I'm going to play that right now for you. So I thought that video was super cool. I wish so much that we could do something like that at the facility I work at. Unfortunately, we would not be able to, but I wish we could because I thought it was so creative and so awesome. Okay, I'm going to get back into the PowerPoint. Stay with me for a second. Okay, so we're going to continue. So the next part here, in about December of 2020, we started a newsletter at our facility where patients have the opportunity to provide artwork, provide poems, provide stories, provide articles that they would like written to the newsletter that we have. I thought this was a totally cool opportunity for patients to get their thoughts across, because some people have a hard time sharing some of their thoughts, and it really empowered some of them to do so. So this was a great opportunity that we had at our facility, and this is something that could be definitely done at any facility. By any means, it's not, I wouldn't say super easy because formatting and all that type of stuff, but even if you could do like a 1 or 2 page newsletter, maybe if you work at we'll say, I don't know, a nursing home or something, maybe one article is how to crochet or the ins and outs of how to knit a scarf, like something like that would be super cool, so that other patients can learn something new, and then they can also feel compelled or have some encouragement to also share some of their knowledge with some of the people that they live with or they're around also. So this was one cool addition that we had in 2020. Another thing that has been really important for one patient that I work with specifically is NA support programs. So I work with one female patient that has struggled tremendously over her life with substance abuse as well as her mental health diagnosis. Over the past couple of years, she has struggled a lot with also staying out of the hospital. So for her to start NA programming, it was very, very helpful for her. So she was doing NA treatment there, I should say NA meetings twice a week. same time, both days a week, and myself or another person that's part of her team would help her in doing this. She had the opportunity to share on this if she would like to, or she had the opportunity to just listen to the topics the group was talking about. From this program, she also got numbers from other people that are in their recovery, where she has been able to make a couple friends outside of this, where she calls them, checks on them, sees how they're doing, and then they do the same for her. So I remember one day in group, she had said to me how she feels like all of these people are helping her tremendously in her recovery. And I also reminded her how much that she is also helping them. People supporting each other in recovery together are huge support for each other. So doing the NA support group for her has been, like I said, amazing. Because of COVID now, they have groups that are happening 24/7 around the world. So it's also super cool because some of the people that she has communicated with or talked to or heard from in some of these NA meetings are people from around the world. So one of the last meetings I did with her, someone was from Australia, someone was from Canada, and a couple of them, a couple people from England, and it's just awesome that we have this opportunity to be able to talk to people that live all over the world. And they have meetings, like I said, 24/7. So the major drive for us to do something like this with this patient was to establish something for her that was routine, that she can consistently do, that she understands how to do this, and she could continue to do this when she is discharged. So she has gotten into a routine where every Tuesday, every Thursday, she does NA meetings, 3 o'clock for an hour every single week. And she is in this routine now where she knows people who are on the call also. She's friends with some of them. She doesn't have anxiety doing something for the first time and going to a meeting. So we've helped her build upon finding something that she can do that is helpful in her recovery while she's in the hospital that she can also do once she is discharged as well. Some other events that we did, here are some of the flyers from them. So over the summer, we did a tie-dye event. We have 2 different floors on the unit I work on. The second floor, most of the patients, or a majority of the patients, I should say, are more frail and tend to be on the older side. And then the third floor is generally general population. So we, during the pandemic, have had to always program them separately throughout this because of the health concerns to the patients on the second floor. So when we did our tie-dye event, we, like I said, had 2 different days for each of them because we're not able to complete the event together. So this was an awesome event where everybody in the building was able to support patients in tie-dyeing a t-shirt. They did this all collectively as a floor. They came out in groups of 10, and we had a whole bunch of people that volunteered to help do this. And then for weeks after, everyone had a tie-dye shirt and wore it all around the unit, and it all seemed like we were just like a family or like a group because we all had something in common that we did together that we could show. Some other events that we did, so for Halloween, we played Hocus Pocus. So we did this for the one floor before lunch and the other floor after lunch, where we were able to play the movie and also provide a small Halloween snack. I believe this was like cider and like a donut or something like that. And then around Christmas or holiday time, we were able to do a little holiday celebration that involved some holiday cookies, some hot chocolate or cider, and some music by one of the individuals that works with us. So we had somebody that was that worked in maintenance who played a guitar and sang, and we did Christmas carols with all of the patients, which they really appreciated. And we had a couple patients that didn't want to go upstairs because they liked the music so much. So it was really a great time to bring everybody together and to get everybody feeling like they had a little bit more holiday spirit than they had been recently because of feeling so isolated not being able to visit with their families or see anybody outside of the hospital setting. I also want to mention with the holidays, we also had a tremendous amount of community support this year. With the way that budgets have been statewide because of COVID, that has left a huge constraint in the budgets for state funding for programming and whatnot. So we did not have the funding in our budget to provide patients with any type of gift or doing any type of programming for the holidays. So one of my fellow rec therapists, Shailene Swan, was able to get a lot of donations from the community for patients to be able to get at least a couple gifts for the holidays, which was truly amazing. So she is an amazing lady. I wish she could present some of her awesome stuff to you too. But yeah, so I just wanted to show a couple events that were themed that we did on our units, and just like to say the patients really enjoyed them. So maybe you could do something similar in one of the facilities that you work at too. Another activity or group that we started on TU1 where I work in about August, and then TU8 had started this, which is the other adult inpatient unit, a couple months before that. So we order food for patients on the units that have funds in their account, and also have no dietary restrictions. When I say that, I mean they're not on like the choke table. They don't have consistency based diets where we would have to prepare the food. They have to be able to have like a regular diet for the most part and have funds in their account to be able to purchase food. So since August, my coworker and I have been completing this group. So the way the group is we order from a local establishment on Sundays. So when I say local, I mean locally, I don't know how to say it, locally sourced companies. So we don't order from places like McDonald's or Burger King or any of those places. We go to places that we can support locally too. So when we do these groups, we do usually have between about 4 or 5 patients at a time because of the room size that we have on TU1 when we complete this group. On TU8, they have anywhere between 8 to 10 patients when they complete this. And they have different spaces than we have to do this. So what we have done is we on TU1 surveyed the patients on the floor on what types of foods they are most interested in or restaurants they would like to order from, and we charted all of this information to see like who likes burgers and fries for like their top choice, who likes Asian food, who likes pizza and wings. So we charted all of this so that we could try to have people order together that would like similar types of foods. We've also tried to go to places like we have Wegmans near me that has like a million things that you can order from there. So that has also been super helpful in ordering patients food because they offer so many different options. Like most of you probably know subs, sushi, hamburger bar. They have pizza, and they have a lot of different stuff that they could offer. So how we do it is we rotate between the units. So if we start on the 3rd floor, we go 4 or 5 patients each Sunday. They order food, and then once we have gone through everybody on that floor that wants to do the group, has money, and doesn't have any restrictions, we then move on to the 2nd floor, and then we just rotate back up to the 3rd floor once we have completed everybody on each floor. So one additional thing I will say is, depending on when you pick the day of the week, if you were to do something like this for your facility, might depend on what places are open. So because of my schedule and my coworker's schedule, we worked out that we would do this on a Sunday, which is a fine day to do this, but then a lot of places or certain places are often closed on Sundays. So one change I did for a patient, I have a patient that I work with that is from Palestine, and her translator had identified that she had liked certain food from a Middle Eastern restaurant. And when I looked up that restaurant, as well as a lot of other restaurants that had food similarly to that, almost all of them were closed on a Sunday. So I put in a request to be able to have this patient eat out on a different day, like a Thursday, for example, so that she was able to get the food that she really enjoyed, that was important to her and her culture, important to her before she came into the hospital. And I worked with her translator and going through the menu with her to be able to pick out certain foods that she really enjoyed and that she wanted. And it was overall really successful. She smiled a lot and she said thank you, and she was super appreciative for that. So I think also, just so when you do come up with this group, think about if you're able to have flexibility in the day that you pick, trying to pick a day that has more flexibility in what is open versus what is not open, depending on the time that you're able to do this group in the day. So Sunday has had some challenges, like I said, because some places are simply not open on Sundays. But because of my schedule and my other coworker schedule, that was just the day that we had to come up with for that. So that's another example of an event we do at Hutchings. Another thing that we've been doing on the units is some karaoke programming, which has been super fun to do with a lot of the patients. They do this every Thursday and Friday, and they truly look forward to it. We have certain patients that will ask, are we doing karaoke today? When are we doing karaoke next? I want to sing Johnny Cash. So this has been super fun. We recently got a new wireless karaoke machine that's been even more helpful, so that patients are able to pick any song that they would like on YouTube, and then they could sing that for the group. And like I said, that has been so much fun to facilitate and be a part of on the unit when patients are able to complete this program. A lot of them will sing and dance along with their peers. Half the time, the person that picked the song is not the only person doing the song, because everybody is so into the music that they picked that it's just truly a really fun time. So that's another program that we have done. Some other little art projects that we have done on the unit is we've done some rock painting, where patients are able to paint or write some motivational sayings on rocks that we have. We got markers specifically for rocks to be painted on rocks, so they were really easy to use. We completed this a couple times, and then we allowed patients to be able to take them with them to put in their own garden when they were discharged, or if they wanted them to be kept here, we then sprayed them and then we put them outside so that they could be seen for everybody. Okay, and then as we continue, we purchased some smaller canvases, I should say, for patients to be able to do similar things like writing motivational sayings on them, that they could either choose to take with them or they could leave on the unit. I'm hoping to try to figure out a way to be able to either frame a lot of them or make a collage with all of them and put them up somewhere if we're able to. Like I think I've said a couple times, we just have a lot more restraints or restrictions with what we're able to do because of working on an inpatient unit. So with these canvases, we had to buy the smaller ones specifically because a lot of the bigger ones have staples in the back, and we can't have any staples in any of the things that we use. So we use smaller ones with this. So a couple patients, when they were discharged, chose to take some of theirs with them, which is totally fine, right? So they could put them in their room, or they could give them to someone else if they choose to. So this is just another example of an activity that we did with the patients on an inpatient unit. So a lot of patients, while I have been a part of Hutchings, have been really driven in supporting the community a lot, which is super awesome. So some of the things or some of the ways that patients that I work with have done so is they have made motivational cards for patients in other hospitals. So recently we had 2 or 3 patients on the unit that made motivational cards for the kids unit at Upstate. So they asked for some sayings that they could put on cards, some pictures to put on the cards, pictures like motivational sayings or stuff in color that they could glue on these cards. And then they gave them to me to mail to Upstate. And it didn't require anything big. So I just put a letter in the envelope that said, please give these to some patients that could use these. So whatever that might look like. So for a couple patients on the unit, like I said, this was very encouraging for them and empowering for them because they felt like they were doing something really, truly awesome. And they were able to have the, I guess, understanding to know that they've been struggling staying on the unit, and they know other people have been struggling having to stay, whether it be on their unit or in the room. So they wanted to help them too. So some other ideas I have on here too are maybe making bracelets and sending them. So some bracelets you could see on the top right. This would just involve some string that you could get from any local craft store. Maybe encouraging people to donate some of their spare clothes if they're not using them, if their clothes are too big, if they don't fit. Maybe this would involve them also cooking for a neighbor that's having a hard time with the pandemic, or a neighbor that works really long hours and doesn't have the opportunity to cook for themselves, whatever that might look like. So maybe we're supporting patients in doing some of these tasks. So one of the patients on the unit recently voiced a lot of interest in making smoothies. So she wanted to learn how to make smoothies, so then maybe she can make them for other people that she lives with when she gets discharged. So that's one thing one of my coworkers has been doing over the last couple weeks, going through ingredients with her and bringing those ingredients in and making them with her so she can figure out how to make them with very simple ingredients, so then she can also make them when she's discharged and make them for other people after. So with a lot of these ways of supporting the community, like again, it's going to depend on your facility, what ligature risks are going to be, what restrictions you have in place. Like for instance, if we were to complete the bracelet making, this would probably be a one-on-one activity with a patient where all supplies have to be turned in after, because of the risk of harm that it could cause. So it just completely depends on what your facility is able to allow, or what constraints you have in place at this point. So the next part I have is individual folders. So one thing that my intern recently worked really diligently and really hard on is creating individual folders for almost every patient on the unit, which she did a phenomenal job on. So one of the reasons that we completed individual folders for patients is during the pandemic just starting, a lot of people felt extremely isolated, felt like they couldn't do anything, there was not much to do. So they needed some resources to either read, things to do to complete, or some help looking for additional resources that they would like. So what my student did is she interviewed each patient individually. She asked them a variety of questions. She asked them what their interests are, so what they like to do in their leisure time, what they have interest in, whether it be fishing or gaming or journaling or photography, whatever that might entail. And then she also went through each of the patient's treatment plans to see what the patient is working on with their objectives. So those examples could be they're hoping to learn additional coping skills to managing their symptoms and some of their aggression, or maybe they're working on their substance abuse, or they're working on some of their paranoia or their anxiety. So this is also really important to look through their treatment plan, because we didn't want to just provide them with information about things that they like to do, but we also wanted to provide educational information as well. So she researched general information to add to the folders like articles, Sudokus, word searches, puzzles, different magazine articles, some coloring or art pages, some motivational sayings, some exercises or mindfulness breathing, stuff like that. She researched a lot of general information that she could give to a lot of different patients, and then she really honed in on what each patient really needed. So she printed the items that they also asked for specifically. So some patients specifically asked for GED workbook pages, also asked for sports articles about specific teams, about how to make jewelry or jewelry making articles, about Bryan and Stratton degrees, what kind of classes they would need for those certain degrees, learner's permit tests, and questions and answers with those. Some patients ask for language information. So one guy asked for Croatian information, which she did a phenomenal job with because it took her a very long time, and she gave him a really extensive list of how to learn the language. And she also provided a couple other patients with other information on how to learn specific languages that they asked for as well. Some patients asked for specific self-help manuals or self-love worksheets. So it just depended on the patient what they specifically wanted, but she did very well with doing this. I was really proud of her because so many patients were so pleased because of this and so happy with all the stuff that they received. Also, she organized them really well so that she put a sticky note between each section. So it would say like word searches, and the next section would say information about fishing, and then the next section would say we'll say like maps of the area where you're going to live, whatever it be. So she didn't just put it all in a folder and they had to just figure out where it was. So she also did a really good job of labeling it really well so people can really see what was in there. Some other examples that I don't want to forget to mention are some things that she added to some of the folders were some bus routes for patients to know how to get to places in the area. If they did decide to live in the Syracuse area, they wanted to know like what bus would I take and where did that bus route go. They also asked for some fishing information, different lakes in the area, because we had one patient that is from Rome, Utica area, and he was going to be moving this way to Syracuse area. So he asked for some fishing information or some information specifically about what type of lures to use or what type of bait to use with certain types of fish, hiking trails in the area, coping skills worksheets, some anger management worksheets, and a lot of other things. And I also want to add one thing that she added that I think left a huge impact on people is that she left a small note to each patient that was included in the front of each of their folder. And it could include simple things like, for instance, Jeff, you're doing so great in your recovery, and I'm so proud of how well you are doing. I have included some materials in here for you to learn a few more coping skills to help manage your symptoms, some information about housing options in your area, and some AANA information per your request. I hope you enjoy. And I think the fact that patients were able to get a folder that was specifically geared towards them made them almost like in awe. Like, I remember she went to give a patient a folder on the unit, and he was like, no, I think I'm okay. And she's like, are you sure so-and-so? I made this specifically for you. And he was like, you did? And he like almost couldn't believe that she put all this time and effort into making him his own specific folder, which made a lot of patients really appreciate the time and effort that she put into it. So this was something that my student took on as her special project, and she did, like I said, phenomenal with this. So this could be something that maybe yourself or a student could do at your facility, and just providing patients with additional resources and additional supports to them on the unit. And along with this, once this legwork is done, a lot of this could be saved and utilized at a later time. Like the housing options, she came up with a sheet of housing options in our area, and then that was saved so that could also be distributed to other patients in the future. She came up with, like I said, the trails, the hiking trails and fishing places in the community, and that could be saved and provided to patients, or even the learner's permit test answers and questions, like that could all be saved and then provided to people at a later time. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about validation and how important validation is in the working with the people that we work with, whether it be coworkers or the patients that we work with. Validation is truly important in the communication that we have with other people. So think about the last time you felt very frustrated in a disagreement you had with someone. Ask yourself, did you feel that the other person was listening to you? Did you feel respected as a person of equal worth? Did you feel that the other person was making an effort to see your perspective? The lack of listening causes a feeling of disrespect that results in all of us becoming more upset because of that disrespect than the content of the issue that we brought up or that we had. So essentially, our feelings are not being validated, they're being invalidated when we're feeling that way. I know personally, I had an experience where I felt invalidated by a coworker, and it made me feel really bad. And it made me remind myself how important it is to validate the patients that we work with, whether it be validating their struggles being on an inpatient unit, validating their feelings of how it kind of sucks being away from their family. I like validating that their feelings are heard, right? So validation is about learning, understanding, and expressing acceptance of another person's thoughts or experiences. When you validate an emotion, that does not mean that you agree with what that person is saying necessarily. You communicate that you understand what they are feeling without talking them out of the feeling that they're having. So validation is finding the small part of the person's feelings or behavior that makes sense instead of arguing against what they want. We are seeing the person's perspective and point of view and communicating with your words or your actions that you understand that. Okay. So I'm going to go over some benefits to completing validation too. So the first one is communicating acceptance. Validating feelings demonstrates you care and you accept the person for who you are. So for me, a lot of the people that I find most supportive in a coworker at work that I have are these types of people. The people that demonstrate they care about myself and they care about the feelings that I have and who I am and accept me for who I am. Strengthening relationships is another benefit of validation. People feel more connected and feel like they have a stronger relationship with a person if they are being validated by this person. So when we validate the patients or the people that we work with, we are strengthening that rapport that we have, and we're building that positive relationship that will be really vital for their treatment and helping them in their recovery process, whether it be in a hospital or maybe their home life. If we're working in a home setting or community setting, we're building that relationship so we can assist them in the goals that they have or in their treatment or their recovery. Showing value is another benefit of validation. When you validate someone's feelings, you show them that they're important to you. Even what they're saying is important to you. You have better emotion regulation when people feel that others hear and understand them. It can help Lessen the intensity of strong emotions. This can be most important when it comes to negative or distressing feelings occurring. So it allows people to have that ability to be willing to communicate things to somebody that they have found to be a support for them. So when we're building these therapeutic relationships and strengthening relationships between ourselves and patients or coworkers, we are then making it so people are willing to share things with us and willing to ask us for help and willing to work with us, I should say, not work for us, work with us. It also allows for a decrease in intense escalating emotions when we're able to help patients regulate their emotions better. So some ways to validate include using active listening. So with active listening, that entails listen and then observing. It involves accurate reflection. So maybe you're repeating or paraphrasing what you heard the person said or what they had said and just paraphrasing it back to them. Like, I heard you say such and such. Is that correct? Conveying accurate empathy of what was not said. So what they might be feeling is an example. Confirm that their feeling, thought, or behavior makes sense given their past. So we're validating some of the struggles that they have been through and validating why they're feeling that way at the current moment. Confirming the feeling, thought, or behavior makes sense in the moment. So those are all tips of how to complete validation. Some things to keep in mind when doing this. So like how to validate for any of us. Maybe we let someone know that their problems and their feelings are worthy of your attention, because with the chaos on the unit sometimes and with so many things going on, that is the biggest thing that I think we could give people is our undivided attention sometimes. And being willing and able to do that is very impactful for people that need just someone to hear them and to listen to them. Another way to do this is to listen and just simply listen to what the other person is telling you. Seeing the individual's perspective and point of view of what is going on, recognizing their perspective as having a value or meaning to them, responding to what is reasonable or factually correct about their situation, and taking the individual's problems seriously, not to discount them or say they're wrong or say what they're saying doesn't have value, because then it just makes it so that person doesn't feel comfortable sharing things with you or talking to you if you're constantly invalidating the things that they're telling you. A couple other things to practice and to keep in mind is to convey respect and offer no solutions when you're validating someone. They should be coming up with their own solutions themselves. So we're just validating some of their feelings and some of the things that happened. Some of these examples can include, I see how you would feel that way. That must be really hard. I feel the same way. How frustrating that sounds. I bet you're frustrated by this situation. I'm here for you if you need me. Another example you might say is, I know you are feeling angry because I was 15 minutes late coming home or coming to group or coming to meet with you. It was not my intention to be late or to make you upset. I had something that came up that made me late, but I can see that you having to wait for me made you upset, and I'm sorry that this happened. So those are just some examples of how you can provide validation to somebody. So validation does not mean you are approving of the individual's behavior, does not mean you're agreeing with the individual, does not mean you're conveying warmth in a patronizing way, and it does not mean you are accepting of inappropriate conduct or behavior. So keeping in mind with validation that sometimes when people need validation, we cannot agree with some of the things they're saying, even if we tend to maybe agree with them. So an example could be like, I think one of these things is something that patients complain about more than anything is the food sometimes, whether it be this food isn't good, we don't get enough food, the food sucks. So we don't want to agree with them because then we're not making this any better for ourselves, right? Because the food cannot change. The food is made by dietitians on the unit. The food is kind of like what it is, right? So we don't want to agree with the individual about things, especially something like that you cannot change, right? So just keeping in mind that, like, not agreeing with an individual on something that you cannot control. For instance, like I said, the food. And we're not accepting of any inappropriate behavior that they are doing because of being upset. So the don'ts of validation, to keep it simple, don't criticize. So we're not criticizing anything they're saying, or reprimanding them or telling them they're doing something wrong. That's not where we're supposed to be doing this, right? Don't be judgmental. So we're not telling them you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you made these mistakes. Oh, I see why this is happening. Don't minimize their feelings, right? Because the moment we minimize how they're feeling, again, that's where they're like, I don't want to talk to this person. They think my little problems mean nothing to them, or these are just little problems to them compared to what they think are big problems. And honestly, with that one, I also think that sometimes we minimize what people tell us or say to us, not on purpose. It just happens because we just compare too much ourselves to other people. So when we do that, we are kind of just saying, oh, I know my life is more going on, or I have more to deal with. So we minimize what other people are going through, not realizing that it's kind of minimizing their struggles and their story and the path that they have taken in their life. So a couple more don'ts I have are, don't tell them about your problems. So when you're validating someone, you are not talking about all of the problems that you have and all the more things that you have to do, or how you agree because you have all of the same problems as them. We're not talking about ourselves when we're completing validation. We're just letting the other person vent or talk to us where we're listening to them. We are not giving advice. So we're letting somebody talk about what's going on, whether it be something going on the unit, something going on in their personal life, and we're listening. We're not offering them advice on how to change the food on the unit, for instance. We're not offering them any type of advice or things that they should change or things that they should work on. This is purely a time where we should just be listening, reflecting on what they're saying back to them, and validating their feelings and the things that are going on. So we're not validating anything that's invalid as well. We are not offering solutions. That's very similar to the advice piece. We're not offering any solutions to the problem that they are supposedly telling us, or the thing that they're supposedly telling us about. We are simply just listening. And then just another simple thing that we talk a lot about at Hutchings is don't say but. Because how often has somebody said something to you and they've sounded like they're being very validated and they're being very supportive, and they just use that word but, and then it just invalidated and got rid of everything that they just said before that, right? So we really try not to use the word but as much as possible in talking with the patients that we're working with. And I would encourage you to use a lot of these techniques with the patients that you work with, or residents, or whatever the people that you serve, however you phrase their title. And also use a lot of these validation techniques with your coworkers, because it really could build a really stronger relationship between yourself and your team and the people that you work with. So I don't want to get into any more detail about validation specifically, because I think I've gone over it quite a bit. If you want to learn any more about validation specifically, Hannah Brown is going to be doing a validation therapy presentation pre-recorded as well, and I would encourage you to take a look at some of the stuff that she talks about in her session. Okay, so I'm going to just move on. So my last thoughts to you is I just want to thank you all for attending this conference, for one, because you're taking the time out of your day to learn something, to better yourself as professionals and help support the patients that you work with as much as you're able to through the pandemic and through the work that you do. I also want to thank you for all of your incredible work you do every day to support the people around the country who need it the most. I think healthcare workers and a lot of the CTRS that I work with in the field haven't gotten validated enough in the work that they do. And I want to just take the moment to say thank you for all of the work that you guys do, because without you, a lot of people might be lost, you know, and what you do is very rewarding to a lot of the patients that you work with. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for working extra days, extra hours, and thank you for doing this without needing a pat on your back and without needing the gratification. Doing this every day, and thank you for staying committed in the field and as a CTRS in the field. So just want to validate you all because it's hard work what we do. The people we work with are not always easy to work with, and they take a toll on us sometimes. And I just want to say thank you for all your continued work, and thank you for continuing to do what you all do, because we all have struggles in our own field of work. If anyone has any questions or they need anything from me, I have my email address listed below. Like I said, thank you for attending the session. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to do so. And then I'm just going to give you my works cited at the end. I'll leave it here for a little bit, and then I'm going to go back so you guys have my email address again. So here are some of the resources that I used in making this PowerPoint, some of the articles I used. I showed you the URLs already for the paint and sip nights, so you can feel free to take a look at those at any point. Take a look at some of the videos that I had also showed you too, because those would be really helpful. Like I said earlier, please include any videos or any work that you all have done in your time as a rec therapist that could be helpful to the group as well, because I'm sure a lot of people on here would really appreciate it. I know I would too. So thank you for your time. If anyone needs anything, like I said, here's my email address below, and enjoy the rest of your conference. 1722.